Hey everyone, welcome back to Mind Keys. My name is Dave, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about microdosing and anxiety and the pros and cons of both. So watch on. But real quick, I just wanted to acknowledge that I've been meaning to make this video all week long for you guys, but it's just been too cold. And the room I'm working in here only has a space heater. We don't have any central heating in this house. So it's either record and have it quiet enough that the mic can pick me up, or I can have the space heater on, but when I have the space heater on with the mic, it's too loud to really record well. So my apologies if this content is reaching you late in the week. I also want to just acknowledge that I'm going to start doing probably 2 to 3 videos a week. I just have so much I want to talk about, so many ideas to convey, so much value to offer you guys. And honestly, if I want to be real with you, I saw a great Gary Vee video where he made an awesome point that it's really my job just to get the content out to you and not to be so self-critical and not trip too much on what you think of it, but rather just get it to you and let you make your own decisions. I don't know what my best work is going to be. I don't know what's going to land best for you. All I can do is communicate and build this relationship. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm going to just kind of bang it out, start busting out these videos for you. So hopefully you'll like the content. So let's go ahead and dive into this week's topic of microdosing and anxiety, what I've learned, what I've seen, what I keep seeing online, and kind of just, separate the pros from the cons and talk about it a bit. All right, let's get after it. Okay, so it's probably pretty safe to say that if you're watching this video, then that means either you're microdosing yourself or you are interested in the topic, it's something you're considering doing and you want to learn more about, or possibly it's something you're researching for a friend or a family member, a loved one, or someone who you think might benefit from this information, in specific in relationship to anxiety. So I wanted to give you a bit of my take and my experience with my own anxiety issues with microdosing and how it's helped. I want to share a bit about what I keep learning online as I read more and more about it. And I wanted to just kind of lay out what I think are some of the pros and some of the cons with microdosing. So first things first, I want to clarify what it is so that we have a good sense of what I'm talking about here, because it seems like there are a lot of people online who are approaching microdosing from a misinformed place or from a place of kind of misadjusted expectations. They're either expecting too much of it or they're kind of going about it in a way that's different than how it was originally intended. So I wanted to just kind of get everyone caught up and up to speed and kind of lay out my understanding of it here so that we are at least working with like a common baseline of understanding. So as far as I understand it, microdosing was first kind of articulated or codified to the world by James Fadiman, who is a legend in the psychedelic therapy world, and surely has been a thing probably as far back as the 60s, maybe even the 50s, but really was kind of articulated in the 2000s by Fadiman as kind of a way of approaching using psychedelics therapeutically in our day-to-day lives. And the idea, the definition of a microdose is a sub-perceptual dose. Now, this is really important because a lot of people think that that means take just a little bit, just enough to get kind of high. And that's not really what he's saying. What he's saying is take just enough that you don't feel it, but it's in your body. That's what a sub-perceptual dose is. So for every person, that's going to be different. What it takes to get to that threshold where you're just under where you actually feel it. So in other words, you don't want to be walking around high. If you're taking a low dose of a psychedelic and you're kind of having a buzz, or you're a little bit spaced out, or you're giggly, or you're, in other words, you're feeling something, that means you're not microdosing. That means you've kind of taken it just a little too far. And not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that per se, but just wanted to clarify that that's above the threshold of what's considered a microdose in kind of the most classic sense of the term. And I keep seeing in places like boards like Reddit or, other boards that it seems like there are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of you out there suffering with mental health issues, struggling with anxiety and a lot of depression. And my heart just goes out to everyone. And it's really clear that a big part of that is people wanting to microdose to basically replace their meds. I see a lot of this where people think that they can just take a mushroom instead of taking, whatever SSRI they're taking, and hope that that's going to help them be able to feel more and have more of themselves back and manage and cope and go about their lives and feel better. Now, I think personally, and, this is debatable. This is one of those, there are different takes on it. But I think, personally that this is a misguided understanding of what psychedelics are fundamentally, how they work, and what you're going to get out of them. So for some people, sure, yeah, some people microdose, and for sure it makes them a little more relaxed, a little more happy, a little more motivated, a little more, in control of themselves, able to, deal with life better and cope and able to manage their, bad habits better. There's all kinds of great, amazing stories about that kind of stuff online. But they aren't necessarily going to just fill in the gaps. What happens a lot with psychedelics is that really they are a therapeutic. So when you take a psychedelic, it is going to have a therapeutic quality, meaning that it's going to bring stuff up. It's going to stir the pot at a deeper level in your nervous system and help your nervous system start to bring up issues for resolving. So it's going to invite you. It's going to require over time that you are working on yourself. It's going to require that you are looking at things that you've been hiding and repressing because they will be coming up when you microdose. So just want to put that out there because a lot of people take microdosing thinking that it's just an organic replacement for meds, and it's not. There's a lot of times where you have to taper off your meds if you even want to try that. And I'm not even saying you should. That's something to talk to your doctor about. And even for the people that do, sometimes they taper off the meds. The microdose isn't strong enough to help them manage their symptoms, or they're still dealing with a lot of stuff, or they're not doing therapy and they're just trying to maintain at a neurochemical level. And I just want to make the point that this is really a misuse of what psychedelics are intended for. They're not really like a medication. And it's also a misuse of what microdosing is supposed to be, in my humble opinion. Okay, so the third caveat I want to bust out with you guys really quick here is just to make the point that really there's no science around microdosing at this time. Not yet anyways. So when you're looking at, any sort of psychedelic research about anxiety, generally speaking, that was in a very specific context, and it's important to understand this. That is going to be for terminally ill patients who are dealing with end-of-life anxiety. That is in a context of therapy plus high-dose psychedelic sessions. So you're looking at, therapists getting together with these people. They're doing multiple therapy sessions by themselves without psychedelics. Then they're doing a high dose, or maybe not a super high dose, but a full dose psychedelic session where the person's really having a full trip. And then afterwards, they're doing more therapy and checking in and checking their metrics all along the way. So that's an entirely different thing in terms of anxiety than, say, microdosing for general anxiety, microdosing for social anxiety, microdosing for, some sort of acute anxiety disorder or something like that. We don't really have any data on that. And I want to make this point with you because, again, it's another one of these areas where people kind of have misguided expectations, and it's worth kind of just clarifying, setting the record straight as to where we're at in 2021 with this. And remind you that if you're going to be microdosing for anxiety, you are essentially experimenting on yourself. You are your own guinea pig, and it may or may not work. It may work as expected. It may work better than expected. It may not work at all. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't work, and just understand that you are really kind of just taking your own mental health into your own hands and experimenting if this is what you're choosing to do. Okay, so now that we've gotten the kind of caveats out of the way here, let's go ahead and just crack right into some of the cons here. I wanted to get these out of the way first so that you have a better sense of what to look out for if you're considering doing this, because let's face it, if you're dealing and struggling with anxiety, you want to do everything you can to kind of stack the deck in your favor in terms of creating more stability, more ease, more of a sense of well-being. And in my experience, it really can go either way when it comes to microdosing. So the first thing to know when it comes to microdosing that might be a con for you if you're anxious and you're thinking about microdosing is that if you take a little too much, even just slightly over, like you're still microdosing, but you've taken just slightly over what you can tolerate, it can actually make anxiety worse for the duration that the psychedelic is in you. So it can actually trigger a little bit of fight or flight response, and that can turn into feeling more anxious. So on the days that you're microdosing, if you got your dose a little too high, you can end up worse off than you did if you hadn't taken in anything at all. And we keep kind of seeing this over and over, in these forums where people are kind of talking about taking them, and then they take them, and then they're like, I had a terrible time. I've been struggling with this. I'm feeling more anxious. So just a heads up, that's a major con to consider, is that you've got to really be on point with your dosage. So the other con I kind of already mentioned here, but I thought I would just mention again, and that is that if you're somebody who really needs clear-cut science in order to feel safe and know that you're doing the right thing and that you're not putting yourself in any, risk, this isn't necessarily the best choice for you, because the truth is right now there just isn't any science around this particular, body of study or this particular, circumstance. So if you're someone who needs that sense of certainty, stability, clarity, safety, and like a guarantee, then I would recommend avoiding microdosing for anxiety, because it really is just an area of self-exploration, kind of biohacking, and we don't really know yet with any sort of conclusive science what works, what the dosage levels are that work, what the protocols are that work. It's all very much subjective. So just know that that's also a big con. We don't have any science, and you got to get your dosage right if you're going to do this at all to have any benefit with your anxiety. Okay, so let's talk about the pros a bit. Now that we've kind of gotten all the caveats, all the cons out of the way, let's talk about what seems to be working. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit of my own experience. So first thing first, for those of you that are new to the channel, which is probably most of you, because I'm a new channel, I don't have a lot of subscribers yet. By the way, if you like this content, please consider subscribing and supporting. Click on the subscribe, click on the bell, comment, interact. Let me know what you liked about this. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know who you are and what you're about and why you're watching. Anyways, my first video on this channel was a share of my own success story, something that happened to me where I had moved to a new town, this new town I'm in, and was having a bit of social anxiety. And I decided to try a little bit of microdosing in combination with what I had already studied, which is some self-hypnosis and some NLP techniques. And I put the two together. So I took advantage of the kind of increased neuroplasticity that I was experiencing from the microdose. And then I used and leveraged that kind of flexibility to do deeper kind of self-hypnosis work on myself. And it worked really well. I had an amazing turnaround. I had a very rapid, quick shift in this issue. And this is an issue that had kind of been on and off in my life for years. I'd had social anxiety before, but it had kind of come and gone. But since I'd kind of done this round of, self-hypnosis and microdosing, it really had just cleared the issue out. So what I've noticed, and this is true also with other people I've worked with too, is that you can use microdosing in combination with some sort of a therapeutic technique. So whether, that's a somatic technique for you, or whether that's journaling, or whether that's, you're going to a therapy or a coach or whatever. What I've found is that if you're microdosing in combination with that, it really can kind of accelerate that change work. It can accelerate that personal growth process because you have more neuroplasticity. So that would be a major plus in my book. That would be a major reason to do it, is to do it in combination. It's also great and very supportive for things like developing new habits. So if you want to build a meditation habit, meditating while microdosing is amazing. If you want to build a journaling habit, if you want to build an exercise habit or shift your diet up, I've seen tons of reports of people who have had all these kinds of benefits from microdosing and kind of leaning into these positive habits. So I would say for rewiring your brain, good habit building, that's a major pro. Oh, and shout out, by the way, I am a coach and a hypnotherapist, and this is my area of passion. So if you're interested in working with me or somebody like me in order to create that kind of accelerated personal growth, I'm happy to serve you in that regard. To be perfectly clear, I don't know of that many people who are combining NLP and hypnosis with psychedelics. I seem to be one of only a few out there. So if that's something that appeals to you or sounds like something you're interested in, please feel free to hit me up. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Okay, so shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about pro number 2. So pro number 2 in my book is that microdosing can kind of end up creating this sense of kind of a diffuse, broad, non-specific sense of well-being over time. So if you're microdosing a lot over and over and over, it can kind of just start to tap you into the sense that life is okay, that life is beautiful, that things are safe, that, you know, everything is manageable, that, you know, people are worth being kind to. And you just kind of develop this kind of general positive mental attitude. And as that starts to take effect and take hold, what I've noticed for myself and for a lot of people is that that can really start to just kind of dissolve and chip away at your anxiety and really just help you to kind of distance yourself from it and have this sense of everything's going to be okay. Everything's all right. There's so much good out there. And it can kind of just slowly shifts your background focus. So, you know, a lot of times I think what happens with anxiety is that it can kind of over time narrow our focus down to a very specific set of places we put our attention, places we put our thoughts, places, you know, feelings that we feel. It becomes a very narrow scope of how we're using our awareness and our attention and our body, really. And with microdosing, it tends to loosen up that neural pathway so that we're not strictly bound to that set of awareness. And we start to become more aware of all kinds of other things that might be going right, that are other possibilities in our lives, that feel good, things that we're tuning out that we normally don't notice that become sources of pleasure and well-being to us. So over time, I'd say that that creates this sense of resource, the sense of broad, deep, diffuse well-being that really can help you to kind of overcome anxiety. And the third pro here is kind of debatable. Not everyone would agree with this. This is kind of a hot take. It's kind of my own slightly controversial opinion, but I just want to share it because I do think it's actually a net positive, and I think it's worth considering and factoring in here. And that is this. You can also use microdosing if it does stir up anxiety as a way to kind of create a little bit of exposure therapy. So again, controversial take, but hear me out real quick. So traditionally speaking, I came up doing psychedelics, you know, before we had any notion of microdosing and before we had any of this kind of this modern dialogue and this modern renaissance and all the science that's come up around psychedelics in the last 10 years. So back then when I was taking psychedelics, you know, I'd be taking full dose, and it's just kind of a given for most people that when you're taking a full dose of psychedelics, when you're coming up, you're going to have the jitters. You're going to have some sort of come up anxiety, come up fear, come up, you know, worry, concern, paranoia, feeling shaken, feeling overwhelmed. These are all very normal kind of experiences if you've taken a full dose of a psychedelic and you're coming onto it. I think it's really just your body starting to recognize that something's shifting and changing, and it's making sense of that. And there can be a little bit of fear with that sense that something's changing. Anyways, over time, I got used to it, and I got, you know, good at using that as a way to kind of learn how to sit in the presence of my own discomfort and allow it to just move through me and pass. And I got to the point where it just didn't bother me anymore. And it really became really a form of exposure therapy where I would be exposed to anxiety and just have to process it to get through into the rest of my experience with the medicine. So I think that that same attitude can also be applied with microdosing. So you can apply that same thing. So if you are someone who microdoses and you notice it brings up anxiety in you, you can just sit with that anxiety and allow it to be a way to kind of look at and directly engage feeling anxious for a little while until your nervous system over time starts to, through repeated exposure, being exposed to feeling anxious and then nothing happens. And it realizes after the fact that, oh, I'm safe, nothing happened. It was just a worry. It was just a fear. It was just a feeling. Over time, the nervous system learns, oh, I don't have to feel that way. I don't have to worry. I don't have to generate a fear response because I'm okay. So again, hot take, not for everyone. I would not recommend it if you're someone who's highly anxious and struggling and can't function that well. If so, don't use them in this way. But I'm just saying that, for someone who's maybe at kind of a milder to mid kind of level of anxiety, that's another way you could use it. I've never heard of anyone else talking about this. I think it's an important point to bring up, though. And yeah, I just want to throw it out because I do think that the bigger picture with that is that that's also a net positive. So again, not for everyone, but another pro in my book. Okay, so there you have it. So those are my pros and cons for microdosing for anxiety, at least for now in early 2021. I do want to say that personally for myself, when I'm microdosing, I found them to be extremely beneficial in terms of just overall sense of well-being, overall sense of feeling connected to myself, feeling connected to life, feeling relaxed, feeling at ease, feeling, again, that diffuse, broad, generalized sense of well-being in every area of my life. That being said, again, reminder, I have a history of high-dose psychedelics, so I know how to deal with the anxiety that comes up from them. I know what that is. I know what that feels like. I know how to work with it. I'm also trained as a hypnotherapist and an NLP practitioner. So again, I know how to shift states. So I have those tools for myself readily available. So the first thing I would ask you, if you're thinking about doing a microdose, regimen or protocol for yourself for anxiety, is do you have some sort of, self-maintenance, self-care, self-soothing kind of toolkit in place in case things get uncomfortable, because they could. And if so, what are those? And maybe you'd want to mention down below. Maybe you'd want to comment below. Tell me, are you thinking about doing, microdosing for anxiety, or are you microdosing for anxiety? If so, what's been your experience? And if not, if you're thinking about doing them, do you have some sort of a toolkit in place? Do you have support from a therapist? Is someone recommending this for you? What else are you doing for your anxiety, et cetera, et cetera? I'd love to know what kind of the factors are for you that make or break this. Anyways, I hope this serves you in some way. I hope this video adds value to your life and informs you, lets you know what to expect, or maybe gives you some ideas of other ways of approaching it if you're already microdosing for anxiety. So much love, be well. If you like this kind of content, please do consider supporting the channel, subscribe for real, comment down below, like I said, hit the thumbs up, let me know you like this. It just keeps me juiced up and inspired to make more content, which I will be doing on the regular as soon as it warms up. All right, big love to you guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.